8:42 a.m. I'm going to, open the Economic Development Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. First on the agenda, we have the minutes from February 1st. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Any comments, concerns? All right, if we're all good, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, Fred Leonardo, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
As written.
Any second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes? It's unanimous, great, thank you. Let's see, next on the agenda we have the, I don't think he's here though, Zach, correct?
Yeah, they actually emailed me yesterday stating that they're uncomfortable with in-person meetings at this time, and it was too late for me to switch the meeting to a hybrid meeting because the agenda had already been posted.
Sure.
So I suggested to them that we bring them back in April and have a hybrid component that is properly posted for that to accommodate them.
Okay, great. Then we'll move right along, making good progress here. 8:10, our discussion, which is the proposed rubric for the fiscal year 23 EDC Business Assistance Grant. Zach?
Great. Per all the conversation from the board and from some of the applicants around more transparency and clarity for what to do when the EDC grant program becomes competitive, staff, including Assessor John Steinberg and Community Development Director Fred Leonardo and I, took the comments that we had heard from these EDC meetings by looking at the minutes. We also asked directly for comments, and Mark and Holly and a few others submitted some of those directly to myself. So we took those comments along with looking at a few of the other municipal grant programs in the greater Boston area to try and put together a rubric, a scoring rubric for the EDC Business Assistance Grant Program. The idea for how this might work is that there are, I believe, 11 pieces of criteria, and if an applicant to the EDC Business Assistance Grant Program meets any one of the criteria, they receive a score that corresponds to the weight of each criteria. The maximum number of points that an applicant can receive with the rubric is 100. John, Fred, and I, if you flip the page to the other side, tested this rubric on all of the applicants that we've received in fiscal year 22. And so you can see that the rubric, I think, does what it's supposed to do. There is ample variation between different applicants. Not everyone consistently scores 100. Nobody has scored a 0. And I think it does provide enough variance for the board to use this to make decisions when it decides to fund applications. The way in which Fred, John, and I had envisioned this working would be that when staff are reviewing applications for completeness in the couple weeks before the EDC meeting, we will assign each applicant a score and provide those scores to the EDC. In the EDC meeting where we are reviewing applications and hearing presentations from the applicants, the board will then need to decide how many applications it would like to fund, and then it can choose the top 2 or the top 3 or however many applications it would like to fund based on these scores. The rubric was designed based on your feedback and input to prioritize 2 things. One is downtown revitalization, and the other is new business attraction and stimulating, real estate growth in Westborough's local economy. We can go one by one through the criteria, but I could also let you read that if you'd like. And if you have any comments or feedback, now would be the time. Although I think having tested it, we feel pretty confident that this rubric, does what it's supposed to do and prioritizes some of the applications that at least I get the sense the program was intended to fund and to support.
Well, I think this is great. You guys have done a fantastic job. Thank all 3 of you very much. I think this gives us some much more clarity that we've been needing for some time as the program has grown rapidly over the last year, thanks to you, Zach, and your efforts. I think this is wonderful. Love to hear from other members of the boards. Any comments, concerns, proposed changes, but I think the way that the subcommittee tested it, it looks like it's designed to do what we need it to do. So great work. Thank you all very much.
I have just two, a comment and a question. The first is, amazing, yeah, everything that Todd just said. This is gonna be, I think, moving forward a lot easier too. It's gonna make our jobs easier, and it's gonna make us stronger as a committee, I think. The one thing I saw with, one of the preference points is business being in Westborough for 5 or more years. I just wonder about that. Maybe, I was thinking maybe just 5 years in existence, perhaps, something like that, because if they're in another town or they have a proven track record somewhere else, just a thought. I don't want to discourage new businesses, but that's just a comment I had. I don't think it's. And then the other question I had, what does everyone think about once we get the proposals and everybody presents their applications for the grant, that we then take some time, I guess it won't be closed meeting, obviously, but privately, to assess and judge and go through the rubric and then come back with something. So I think it's going to be hard to do that, like, while everyone's here in the meeting. But I don't know. What does everybody think about that?
So to clarify, are you suggesting having, I guess, 2 meetings that are for grant, like, so, but not fully dedicated to grant review? One meeting where we have the presentations, and then
Right.
another meeting where we come back with scores and, yeah, I guess maybe any more discussion.
Right, something like we can, on our own, go through everything, rank everything, and then we can come together and talk about it. I think it's,
Wasn't part of the,
Yeah, so, yeah.
I think part of the proposal, Zach, was that the subcommittee would review it and give us the score based on the
oh,
So we could
okay.
do either.
Oh, got you, okay, so then,
what you had.
You'd already have the score as part of the you'd already have the
Perfect.
score as part of the presentation.
okay,
So, because it's pretty cut and dry.
Gotcha.
The applicant either falls into a
That makes
scoring
sense.
rubric or they don't. There's
Yeah.
really not a debate on how they'd fall in, it's just a matter of what the final score
Right.
is.
Yeah.
no, that's great, that'd be perfect.
I think your first point too was, we looked at the business operating for 5 years, but also weighed that against a new business to Westborough. So they had more credit.
Okay.
So there's longevity, but there's also, if you're a new business, you got a little bit more credit for coming to Westborough as a new business.
Perfect.
So
Oh,
I think
great.
those two, I think we talked
Yeah.
about that for some time to
Okay.
kind of weigh one against the other.
Yeah, the intent was that when we tested it before having that piece of criteria, a lot of, I think, good businesses with expansion projects, like Nurse Farm, for example,
Right.
had really low scores because they're not a new business to town. They're not, expanding their real estate footprint in any way, but, we felt like we should try and do something to, advantage some of the businesses that aren't in our downtown area and have a long track record of, being a productive business
Right.
in Westborough.
Yeah, oh, that's great, thanks.
I was just thinking of Nurse Farm when I was looking at this, and I can see they would,
Second page.
the second to last, they would get 5 points, but they probably wouldn't have been awarded a grant using this rubric. It is what it is, but I'm just wondering if we thought about the 10 applicants that we had in the last round, who would we have awarded? I'm just curious. And I know we probably can't do that on the fly, but this looks amazing. It looks spot on. I'm just wondering, when we apply it to real life, what would that have looked like, and would we have felt like that's where we wanted to land? Because it might help inform deciding whether this is exactly how we want to do it.
Yeah, if you look at the, gray page, I tried to pick the top 2 or 3 businesses from each cycle. Sometimes there were ties, which is why I did 3. I initially wanted to pick 2. But for Q3 of 22, so the last review period, if we had picked the top 2/3, we would have funded Lindsay Taylor, Lux Realty Group, and Nemizo Learning Labs, if we had used this rubric to the T.
Zach, you're way ahead of me.
Well, so part of the discussion we had too is that even though you have the rubrics, the committee still has to decide how many you want to fund. So you still could have taken the 10 applicants and given them $1,000 each.
That's true.
Just because so every quarter, you're still going to have to decide how you want to use that point system.
Right.
And you may change it. Maybe if there's 3 applicants, you give them all 3. you know, so the point of this was not to make that decision. You'd really have, the committee has to figure that out every time we have a meeting on these awards.
Right.
And it could change. There's nothing that says you, one time you just give one award because it's a $10,000 storefront, and the next time you want to give them to all 10.
Right.
It doesn't prohibit the committee from doing either.
I think it's just been hard because they're sitting here, they're all really worthwhile. We want to say yes.
Yeah.
And so if we land in a place where we can just say, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to, you know, that'll just make it easier, because otherwise I think we're just right back to, let's give everybody something. And maybe that's okay, but I think we wanted to do this to get away from that a little bit and award more, in a more substantial way, to the ones that really met the criteria we wanted to meet. But
Well, and the other thing I'd say to that is that it gives Zach the flexibility that if that's the pleasure of the board, to tell people as they apply, to say, hey, you know, there's 10 applicants this quarter, and we'll likely only give out 2 or 3 awards. So they're not shocked by that. But again, it's gonna be the pleasure of the board as time goes on.
Right, right. But this gives us a kind of a guideline, not one that we have to necessarily choose everybody off of, but we can use as a basis for, you know, input into our decisions. So I think it's great.
Is the board open to change some of the weights? Because when I look at Nurse Farms, I, you know, personally, you know, with my children, love to go to a farm. It's a real community feature, and I see so many of these farms being turned into subdivisions or whatever. It's really hard to operate that. And I didn't know if maybe the 1, 2, 3, fourth one down where we have educational use, health, wellness. I didn't know if we could have farm or food or whatever. I just, when I look at the scores, I'm a big proponent for downtown, don't get me wrong, but I think that's a real community asset that should be encouraged, not just them, but in general.
I agree, but I don't think we'll have a lot of farm
Right.
plants
Yeah,
in front of us. So
yeah.
again, I think we can use this as a guideline and take those one-offs and kind of,
I think they would have qualified under retail too, though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just looking back at the, like, I guess the backup for each line-by-line score, and they did receive the 10 points for being a retail or entertainment use.
And maybe first floor storefront, getting back to encouraging town, vacant spaces, first floor storefront, something like that is really important to a downtown. Would we consider giving them more than 10 points for something like that? Because that's something we probably want to encourage more than maybe some of the others.
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there is a difference between, somebody, I'll use an example, somebody backfilling the Sotheby's space versus another space that may have been vacant for 2 or 3 years. So maybe that's a good point. Maybe there is a way we can kind of put more weight towards a vacant downtown storefront versus one that was, maybe it's a vacancy for 12 months or something like.
That is one of the criteria. I think the weight, though, is only 5 points.
So we could increase the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you need to increase that one.
So the question becomes, do you want to take it, just add 5 points and have 105 points? Do you want to take it from somewhere else? I mean, you can do it either way. It's
Yeah,
kind
it
of,
doesn't matter.
do you want to take another category that's 10 and make it less?
11.
Good. Yeah, wonderful. You got any suggestions on which one you want to downgrade?
Well, why does it have to equal 100?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Let's make it a 10.
You can do that.
But the reality is you can't get 100 anyhow because you have a new business in Westborough and an
And then-
existing business in.
That's a good point. That is true.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this is excellent. Thank you very much. I think one I might try and modify is, Nurse Farm being an excellent example, businesses operated, and I guess this does say we don't have to add to 100, what I'm suggesting here, but businesses operate in Westborough for 5+ years, maybe we make it 5 points for every 5 years, with a maximum
If you've been in
of,
business for 200 years.
That's an extreme example.
but, and you could make it a maximum up to 20 points or 25 points, but longevity in Westborough should count for something. And I think because we're having these discussions back and forth, maybe we take a vote on it at the next meeting, because we've got another meeting before we actually have businesses come before us again. So people can, think through this completely. But, that's just a thought I had. I think just 5 points for 5 years is kind of a lower bar. Jen, did you?
John?
Hi, John Steinberg, Chief Assessor. If I could just add something as we were discussing this. Nurse Farm was a big topic of conversation for us because we thought it was such an important part of the community, which is where some of those came from, the 5-year business and so forth. We tried to look at it and say, this really matters to the community. And so one of the things that we did talk about was the opportunity to reapply if there was competition at any particular time. And the other thing was that we could perhaps add to one of those was a business that promotes sustainability. Because then you're not doing farm necessarily, but it adds a particular niche, not just a business that's doing perhaps sustainable improvements, but pushes some sustainable aspects, and then we tie in the green communities aspect. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I have a question on number 2. Regarding not equipment or signage,
Yes.
and particularly regarding the signage, because I think in a town or a retail environment, good signage is important, because you can have, the inflatable thing with the flapping arms and stuff,
Wacky, flailing inflatable tube man. Yeah.
Maybe encourage people to have nice signage or uniform signage or some incentive. I mean, zoning helps with that, but it doesn't account for taste, and maybe we can put our thumb on good taste with the grant.
I'm open to all changes that the board would like to consider, either to weights or to the language and the criteria. The reason why the working group had included that item and weighted it at 10 was because that we felt from an ROI and best use of public funds standpoint that if we can prioritize using the money for long-term tangible investment in a property and raising property values, that would be, I guess, better than, something that would come down once a business leaves, if it unfortunately does. That said, the way that the rubric is written, if you were a new business or if you were, a downtown business, it doesn't disqualify signage or, equipment. It just would give additional weight to a business that is doing more than that. If the board feels that, we shouldn't prioritize that and, we should prioritize, retail marketing strategies and, things like that, I think, we can obviously tweak the rubric to allow for that. But I just wanted to provide you all with the rationale for why that arose.
Well, I look at bang for the buck and greatest return, and I'm trying to think that if you have something tangible and long-term, it's usually pretty expensive, and is $1,000 really going to? And a sign is long-term. I mean, it is a capital investment, and it doesn't cost a lot. That's just my feedback on that, as far as singling that out.
Any other comments? All right, do we want to take this and review it over the next month, and then at our next meeting, vote on it? Is that, I think, what Sean had recommended?
Yeah, and I think if folks have ideas they'd like to consider, what if they sent them to you directly, Zach, then maybe you could collect them and send them out for the next meeting. But overall, I think there's all these ideas, mostly because people are excited about what you guys have put forward here, so thank you very much.
The one thing that I think would be helpful is just aligning on timeline. I know there was a suggestion that we vote on this at the next meeting. However, if folks send me, feedback and comments, I think it's going to be difficult for staff to decide which ones to include and which ones not to, unless the board takes a stand on them. So what I would suggest is, I guess, extending, and especially given that we have, I think, a little time today to play with, is extending the discussion today, and before we leave, having the board say, we want to change this weight to that, we want to, add this criteria or remove this one, and then, I'll go make those changes, and then we come back.
Yeah,
Or we could make it a 3-month-long process, and you guys can have more time to review and think and send feedback, and then we can do it again at the next meeting, because we don't need this for the next quarter review period. I think what we had discussed was launching this in the beginning of the fiscal year 23 program, because for transparency and consistency with applicants who have already applied for Q4, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that, well, first of all, having you guys here, the subcommittee here, and being able to talk about some of the thought and background to each of these rubrics, each of the categories is helpful. There's also nothing that prohibits us from changing this whenever we want. So we could just start with this, see how it goes for the first quarter or whether we do it in, I guess it's May, see how it goes in May. And then if we want to make changes after that, if we find that there are things that we didn't address here that accurately reflect how we want to disperse the grants, then we can do that. So I think you're right, but we probably should, if other people are in agreement, we probably should spend the time to talk about it now rather than wait until next month and have it all set to go if we want to implement it in May, which I'd like to try it. No?
No, because I think we agreed that it wouldn't be right to implement it in the last quarter when you've gone down this road for the whole fiscal year.
Yeah. All right. Well, then in that case, we do have time.
I think that was Zach's point. I think part of the discussion was to really implement it clean
Yeah.
Next fiscal year, because you're starting with a whole new cycle and whatnot.
Okay.
And if we do it that way as well, we can, or I can amend the application as well to try and capture some of this information from the business. So like right now, the application, it doesn't ask, for example, like, are you a minority-owned business or a woman-owned business or a veteran-owned business? And so, we would just be guessing, really, as opposed to knowing some of those elements.
I like it the way it is right now. I'm prepared to vote.
How many applications do you have for the next cycle?
So far, 2.
Can we see them?
I don't have them ready right now, but I don't have them on my computer. But I'm happy to share them at any point.
So the next time we would be utilizing this would really be in August, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
August.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, does anyone,
And, you could use it as a guide in, the upcoming
it's
quarter.
right.
But, I wouldn't use it as a, hard and fast rule. And I don't think it will ever be a rule. I think the EDC always has the discretion to choose to expend these funds however it pleases, so long as they are eligible according to the criteria of the program.
Run a parallel just to see the end results, okay, we gave out 2 grants for whatever, and if we had followed the matrix, this is where we would have ended up, so it gives us an idea of what we actually did to where we might end up in the next quarter.
If we don't adopt this now, what will happen if you get another 10 applications?
Well, we would,
same position we were last month.
$100 each application, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the board okay with that?
No, I think we'd like to adopt
No.
it.
Well, I would say that the previous applicants, we have also said to them if there were money left over, we would consider coming back to them So if we were gonna use this, we would have to apply it back to everybody who's already applied, and then consider them against the new applicants in the next process.
Didn't we say that they would have to reapply?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we wouldn't have to go backwards, right?
Unless we receive, we wouldn't have to go backwards unless we receive the, I guess, intent to reapply, which I imagine would just be the application that they previously submitted, just resubmitted for this quarter.
I guess I'd be uncomfortable if there were only 2 applicants in May, and then we each gave them a full allotment just because they were fortunate enough to come at a time when there were no other applicants. Now, I'm sure we'll end up with more than 2, but as an example.
Well, for the board's sake, I hope we only end up with 2. Would make the easiest decision that we've had in a while.
Well, I think you should notify those that were unsuccessful that they should apply again. If they choose not to, then they either don't need the money or you know that they've chosen to take themselves out of the process. That kind of answers that question, I think.
And I'm sorry, would the reapplication process be, could I come down and make a copy of my application and give it back to you?
I believe so.
Okay.
Again, it would be, I think, the board's decision on, you know, what level of scrutiny we will need for reapplications, but I don't see why, unless the project has changed, like unless what they are intending to use the funds for has changed, I don't see why we wouldn't just allow them to copy and paste their old application.
So I'm comfortable with the rubric. I actually liked Sean's idea about increasing the number of points that you could get for the number of years that you've been, however that goes up until a certain amount. And I also agreed with, I forget whose comment about the vacant storefront going to 10 from 5. And I think, you know, you've already retroactively applied the rubric to all of these folks who have previously applied. So I would also be comfortable voting on this with those 2 amendments. I guess this is a motion. Voting on this with those 2 amendments and then applying it for the next round, the upcoming round.
Question regarding the motion, Christy. For the vacant storefront idea, does the board have a perspective on how much it would like to increase the weight for that item?
I think 5 to 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I hear?
You're talking about vacant for 12 months, that
Yes.
criteria, yeah. 5 to 10.
And
So
similarly,
there's 2 things, there's the storefront, and then there's the vacant, right?
So
we'd be bumping this one up.
it's the business will
Right.
occupy a property that has been vacant for 12 plus months. So it's about halfway down, a little more than halfway down.
All right, I think I heard a motion.
I guess I didn't give a clear motion
No,
because
no, you didn't.
I'm not used to making motions. The business has operated in Westborough for 5+ years. I don't know if we want to talk about how that would be applied. I know Sean had said sort of could be, 5 points for every 5 years, up to 20 points.
We could just add another line that says business has been in Westborough for 10+ years and have 5 points added there too.
Yeah, that's true.
either way works, and I'm happy with either. I think the question would be, what is the limit? Be it 20 points, 25 points, 15 points, whatever the board would like.
I think you're saying it would just be the 2 lines. So if it's over 5 years, you get 5 points. If it's over 10 years, you get 10 points, and then that's,
Okay.
I guess you would get 15,
Sounds good.
right? Because you would get both.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds good. So we have, right, we have another line here that says.
I liked John's idea about
So there would be.
the sustainability. Also, in thinking about Nurse Farm, I feel like they were offering Westborough something that we don't have, which is sort of that like farm to table dinner, not that I'm aware of. And I think businesses, I'm not making a motion for this rubric, but I think as we go forward, we might think about some sort of bonus for offering something in Westborough that's unique or new.
I love that idea. I think my only concern would be that puts the pressure on the town and staff to know, I guess, comprehensively what we have and what all the businesses offer. And, you know, I would feel a little uncomfortable if I believed there to be something that didn't exist in Westborough, and then, you know, someone came out of the woodwork and it did exist.
Yeah, I think it would be more probably for the committee, maybe would make that, have to consider that as we,
Yeah.
so we have to think about how that would work, but.
Do you have a final motion anywhere in this?
Well, it just goes on and on. My motion goes on and on.
I think we need to decide whether it's 3+ or 7+, and then whether we're going with 5 or 10 for the item right in the middle. Project will create 3+ or 7+.
There was actually a lot of discussion among staff about what the right numbers for that were. Initially, we had 5 and 10, 5, 10, and 15. We looked back at the applicants and we were trying to determine, because a lot of these applicants are small businesses and these are jobs created by the project. So the reason why we went with, 3 and 7 is because it felt like an appropriate amount for, different sizes of small to medium-sized businesses.
So 5 for 3 and 10 for 7+.
Yes. And that's another one where if you would prefer, we could even break that out into 2 lines like had been previously suggested. So project will create 3+ new full-time jobs, you get 5 points, and then project will create 7+ full-time jobs, you get another 5 points.
Does the application ask whether the jobs created are full-time?
It does not, so that is going to be a change that we're going to have to do. And if the board would like to use this as a guide or, adopt it at the next, for the next quarter review, that would be a question that I think we would have to ask the applicants in their presentations is how many new full-time or part-time, and if they say part-time, then we're considering a full-time employee is 35 hours worked, so they could say they have a 20-hour part-time employee or 2 20-hour part-times, and that counts as a little bit over one full-time employee.
I can actually make a real motion for you. So I move to approve the rubric as presented with amendments to the project will create 3+ or 7+ to making that into 2 lines. Changing the business will occupy a property that's been vacant for 12+ months to 10 points, and then adding an additional line for an additional 10 points for businesses that have operated for 10+ years in Westborough.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, then let's take a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. Thank you for your motion, Christy.
I got there.
That was easy.
And a last question while we're on this topic is, Christy, was that motion to adopt effective for the upcoming quarter or for the following fiscal year?
For the upcoming quarter.
Okay, and the board is in agreement in reaffirming that vote, correct?
For the upcoming quarter being?
Being May of 2022.
I thought you needed time to change the applications, though. So I thought we wanted to go with the first quarter of 2023, so we could have a new.
So that can be a separate motion.
Okay.
I was thinking that we would use it for the upcoming, just so we're not back in the same position.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I would agree.
We
I
want
think
to
you
be
do
where
it
we
more
were last time.
formally, to be honest with you. I think next quarter, you can just, everybody would have the rubric in front of them, they can kind of just score it themselves, if they'd like.
That's true. So
As
you,
opposed to
yeah,
voting,
you don't
and
have
then
to
we can
necessarily
adopt
change
Your
it.
personal
Yeah.
decision.
So when the subcommittee evaluates them, they'll have this for any applications that come in between now and the May's meeting.
Right, but I think it's unfair to Zach and the applicants at this point to try to change in mid-stride, and it'd be more uniform to do that, because we as a subgroup have talked about, our working group, I should say, talked about amending the application in whole.
Yeah.
Rather than doing that 17 times. It'd be good, Zach can actually try to incorporate these into the application going forward, but it'd give him some time if we completely implement it in August.
I guess my feeling is for consistency, I think we're better off
Right.
starting July,
Next
next
fiscal year.
fiscal year. As Sean, I think, had mentioned, those applicants who had been in front of us already up to this point, we've evaluated them one way, and I don't know that it would necessarily be fair to evaluate the last group in a different manner. So let's have a discussion on that. How does the board feel
Yeah,
about that?
I don't know, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I get it, but I just feel like we need something moving forward, because it feels like we're floundering when we're trying to judge this and these criteria. And I don't know, I mean, I feel like if we have this, and we've already said that we don't have to use it, it can be like a, a changing document, it doesn't need to be set in stone, but we have something to guide us, then we can use it in, what is it, May? And everybody can be on the same page, like if we let the previous applicants know this is how we're doing it, and the new ones, then I don't see a problem with that.
I actually think the previous applicants that were unsuccessful would appreciate this system, because the number of grants that we gave with the small amount of money really may not be effective for some of the projects that were out there. This narrows the number of grants that you'll give, and I think makes it more transparent to those applicants that are either trying again or trying for the first time. And I don't see any reason to not apply this going forward now. If you're going to let the applicants that were unsuccessful know that to be successful in the future, they need to reapply, you can let them know about the process too. I just think if you end up with 10 more applications, we're going to be right back where we were again.
And there are only 2 right now, right?
Right.
So,
I think the other side is expectations to the business owners. I think we're gonna run into the same problem if we have 10 applications, whether we have this or not. If there's 10 people here and we're trying to decide how we wanna break that money down, I think maybe we have to look at it more as we give 2 $5,000 grants a quarter, and then using this gets to that $5,000 grant, because I think that's what makes the difference to a business is, the full grant. I think when someone asks for 5,000 and we give them 1,000, I don't know if as a business owner, if that really, does that really make the difference in your, your operations? It helps. I mean, I'm sure no one's like, oh, please don't give me $1,000. But on the back end, to fill all the applications that come sit through the process and do all that it might be a lot for a small business to do for a
Yeah.
small return
Yeah.
of their time.
Yeah, it needs to be a meaningful award, not just a feel-good award.
Yeah.
I just think this speaks to the transparency that you're talking about, Jim. I think that's really important for us.
I also don't think that it disadvantages people who have already applied or people who might reapply, because it's not program criteria, so it doesn't disqualify them from applying. It just makes it clear sort of what we're looking at in terms of who we're going to award to.
so if an applicant reapplies, they're basically coming in with a clean slate, is that? Because there's,
What I have told, I guess, what do you mean when you say a clean slate?
as though they were applying for the first time. There's no consideration based on whether they got $1,000.
There's no formal consideration. What I have told applicants,
Yeah.
I guess privately, is that I think they can reapply, but it's unlikely if they reapply in the same fiscal year for the same project that the board would award a total, I guess, grant of more than 5,000. So, if they reapply, if they already received 2,000 and they reapply for a $5,000 grant, I think, and again, we haven't discussed this, so I'm, speaking based on intuition, but I would think it's unlikely that they would be able to get the full 5 in their second application. Obviously, though, that is at the board's discretion, not mine. So I've just been trying to set expectations with some of those businesses that might reapply.
So as a board, how would we evaluate someone who's reapplying? Someone that maybe came in the first quarter, and we said, oh, you have $1,000, but you can always come back. So when they do come back, we should probably discuss how we would look at that. You say, okay, now we think you should have 3,000, but we already gave you one, or, you know, would that be, or?
I would think that the conversation would be more centered around whether or not they've been able to execute the project with the money that they've already been awarded. So for example, I know that Nurse Farm, for example, which we've talked about today multiple times, was initially trying to do a tent, a large kind of tent for outdoor events, and they also, part of that project was a pavement project to try and create some additional parking there to accommodate their new event space. When they presented, they said that if we reduced the grant amount, they would still be able to get the tent, but they wouldn't be able to do the parking project. So, you know, I would think an application like that might be prioritized over an application for a business that, you know, a new business that came to town, applied for fit out, that was, you know, gonna happen anyway, and at this point is complete, and is just kind of asking for, you know, some more reimbursement for the fit up. Again, you know, that's just my personal feeling. It's at your discretion how you choose to consider those things. You might also pair it with that sort of but-for aspect and some of the elements like outlined in the grant program, whether or not it's a, I guess, priority use or priority sector, whether or not, you know, the business is providing services to all ages, age groups, or, you know, a unique or new service to the community, something like that.
I think it goes back, Mark, to the original statement that this rubric is not gonna solve all your problems. You know, it gives you a little bit more information, but you're still gonna have to figure it out quarter by quarter as applications come forward. You're always gonna have this problem. It's a good problem to have because we haven't had it before. We have 1 million applications, that's a good thing. We haven't had a reapplication, to be honest with you. We've had a couple, one business, Dairy Queen, kind of tweaked it about 400 times, but we actually haven't physically, to my knowledge, had an actual reapplication, so it's kind of a new problem you have to face when and if it happens.
Yeah, so it's interesting, I had thought the grant was like a $5,000 maximum for the year, but technically that's not the case, and
The way that the program application is written, it does not say that you cannot reapply or say that it is like, put any time frame on how much you can be awarded through the program. It's pretty open-ended, and so we have interpreted it flexibly to mean that an applicant could reapply if they wanted to. What I've told applicants, though, is, you know, reapplications are likely to be, you know, less prioritized by the board than other applications. So if it's a competitive cycle, you know, I've told folks that, you know, you can and it's eligible and you might get some money, but it's unlikely that, you know, you'll get the full award that you're asking for, or potentially even an award at all. And so that is something that we could look at when the clock turns on the fiscal year and we roll out our new application. Staff, like Fred and John and I, have a running list of comments and or questions or places to make further, to make more clear in the grant program application and overview that we have been collating as we review these applications throughout the year, and we're intending to codify and make changes from once we get a little bit closer to the fiscal year, and ideally after we see the May application, so we have a full year to look at. But that is a great point, Sean, and an open question is, you know, we could rewrite the application to say that there's an annual limit on, you know, awards to this program, and that's $5,000, no matter how many times you apply.
Okay, so the rubric has been voted on and approved. It's now the timing of the implementation. So does anyone want to make a motion as it relates to that, or further discussion?
Make a motion that we implement this for the next funding round.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so it will be implemented next funding round.
Oh, Mark, is that? Sorry.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
when
for-
when I notify the former applicants about the opportunity to reapply or remind them about that, I will make sure that I make clear that we're using this rubric now and that applications will be prioritized based on this set of criteria and those weights.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Can I just, so after we use this in May, I'd love to maybe add to an agenda in June to talk about whether we want to limit how many awards we grant in any given cycle, whether it's 2 or 3, so that we're making meaningful contributions. But maybe let's see how it goes in May, and then have that discussion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
All right.
So we'll add that to the June agenda. All right, next on the agenda is the update on the LRRP Online Business Directory project.
Great. So I'll start off by saying part of the reason why I am presenting on this today is because I do have a small ask for each member of the board if they can contribute a little bit on this project. Context is that, as you all should know, this project is one of the projects that was recommended by the local rapid recovery planning effort when we finalized that plan in late September and early October. The Community Development Department applied for grant money through the Regional Economic Development Organization, otherwise known as REDO, grant program to help fund this program, specifically to use the funds to hire an IT vendor to help us build the online business directory platform, link it to the EDC website, and then that it would be on the town actually to go out and collect some of the information that we will need to upload into the online business directory from the businesses themselves. We have not yet had our kickoff meeting with the vendor. We have gone through an RFQ process and selected 3 Media Web, who is the vendor that actually developed the 495 Metro West Partnership Supply Chain Directory. So we feel very confident that they will be able to execute and deliver a great online business directory for our community, given the success that they had with the 495 Metro West Partnership. They also come very highly recommended from various folks. So yeah, we have not had our kickoff meeting yet, but once we have our kickoff meeting and finalize the design choices for the online business directory, specifically what fields we will allow folks to filter by and what fields we will be collecting data for, we are going to be making a big outreach push to specifically the retail, sales, and service businesses in Westborough to try and get them to provide us the information to upload to the directory. I have already met with our EDC ambassadors, Bonnie and Pete Allen, to make them aware that this project is coming down the pipe and that we will be asking for their support in, either phone calls, email, or physical in-person door-to-door outreach to some of these businesses. I will be working with the vendor to create a standardized Excel template to help collect this information and make sure that it's coming in all consistently. But once we have that kickoff, we're going to need to initiate this large outreach push, and we're going to need the support from each of the board members as possible to assist that, either in, ideally by using the contacts that you have either with your neighbors, your friends who own businesses in Westborough, your clients, your peers, to make them aware of this and to try and get them on board and show them the value and get their information so we can put it in the directory. Or by, if time allows and if you have the capacity, doing any phone call outreach or door-to-door outreach to the businesses whose contacts we don't have. Regarding retail sales and service businesses, we do have a fair amount of contacts for the downtown area, some of the businesses in a handful of the shopping centers. I think where we will need the most gaps to fill is a lot of the businesses along Route 9. So when thinking about who we're going to be calling versus who we're going to be emailing or who we're going to be going in person to, I would think that those retail sales and service businesses along the Route 9 corridor will be the ones that need, I think, heavier lift of support than kind of our downtown businesses and some of those folks. We are hoping to have a kickoff meeting with the vendor within the next 2 weeks, which again will finalize the design, we'll finalize the template, and then we'll kick off outreach with the board members and their ambassadors. I am preparing a sort of a talk tract or script outlining the value proposition and describing what this project is that you and our ambassadors will be able to use in the conversations that they have with our businesses about this project. And then similarly with the vendor, we're going to create that Excel template with the final fields for folks to collect, and I'll distribute that out to you as well when we have it. But I think the high-level takeaway here is that we're going to need to do a lot of outreach in the next 2 months. We are contractually obligated by the grant program to complete this project by June 30th of 2022. And so I believe, without speaking to the vendor about this specifically, I would think the timeline for implementation is a hard push for outreach throughout the end of March, April, and May, and then a focus on starting to upload those information and testing the platform in June, with the goal to launch and make live by June 30th, 2022. Any questions, concerns, or comments about that?
I'm wondering if we can do an outreach to parent groups and other organizations in town. I know that when I was really involved with parent groups and the Westborough Education Foundation, we built pretty large databases of contacts of people to reach out to donate to our raffles and auctions. And so it may be a good source of information that we can pull from.
That would be great. If you have any contacts to those or even just like names of what some of these parent groups are, so I can have a starting point, that would be great.
Sure.
And so I will follow up, Linda, with you offline, but I think that's a great idea.
I can help with that, too.
We could also work with the superintendent.
Yeah. My kids are older. I can tell you the names of the schools.
Yeah, I'm sure that they can push it out for us through the school.
Yeah, project graduation will have a list.
Yep.
That's a great idea.
That's my wife.
There's your contact.
Thanks, Sean.
Great. This is good stuff. I can help out with the businesses on Route 9. I know a lot of landlords. We can reach out to them for their tenant contacts, so we're ready to go.
That's what I was hoping. Thank you, Todd.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is the update on the ambassador program.
Update on the ambassador program. So I met with Pete Allen and Bonnie Sullivan last week to kind of check in on the ambassador program, make them aware of the upcoming outreach that we'll need to do for the online business directory project, as well as let them know that we are resuming ambassador meetings in the next month. I've emailed 3 businesses last week to try and schedule ambassador meetings for March. With the ambassadors, I think our plan is to use Doodle poll to try and coordinate scheduling for these meetings. I know in the past, I think we had tried Airtable or a few other kind of more database-heavy pieces of software. But I just wanted to provide the update to the board that we have not forgotten about the ambassador program, and that it is our goal to have at least 2 ambassador meetings this month as we continue to ramp up and resume normal outreach. One of those businesses is Anonio, so thank you, Todd, for providing that contact information and for the great idea to connect with them.
When you have those meetings, the ambassador meetings, are you reaching out to the board too for anybody who can potentially join?
That was my intention, is I will certainly notify the board and see if there's anybody that wants to join or would like to join. What I had discussed with Pete and Bonnie is that, I don't think that, we'll expect staff to attend any of these meetings. And,
Right.
If a business expresses in the meeting that, we're thinking about doing a, parking lot expansion or something, we can then connect them with the appropriate folks. But everybody will be aware of when these meetings are scheduled, and if you have the flexibility to join, that's more than welcome.
Great.
I obviously want to be mindful of everyone's time as well.
Yep. All right. Next on the agenda is the year in review award celebration. Rob?
So, update, our group has been meeting regularly, made a lot of good progress. Our last meeting was yesterday. So far, our next step is to reach out to the award winners. We've divided up, so each of the subcommittee people is reaching out. We've received feedback from 3 so far, and our goal is to make sure that we've made contact with the remaining 3 by our next meeting on the 15th to coordinate with Westborough TV. And I have to say the people who have responded are very excited, so it's good to see. In terms of budget, we have a budget from the gift account of $23.55. We have expenses so far for trophies of $360, photography $600, and Mark's working with some food vendors to get that pricing.
Yeah.
I guess the one question for the board is, we need additional funding. Are we comfortable reaching out to sponsors like we have in the past, and what would be the methodology to do that?
Everybody's staring at you.
I don't know the specifics of how it's been done in the past. I guess the most important point is that none of the staff on this committee can do that work, but I think we've talked about that before. You know, I think sort of giving a call to people who have sponsored previously is something that you folks could do.
Right.
I think that that's probably what's happened. Jim, you might know better than me how Bonnie
Yeah, it was
handled that.
the officers of the EDC that made that phone call. As Christie said, you don't want town employees asking
Sure.
businesses for money.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll keep you posted on that. We did, as a group, go over to the Great Hall, and looks like a great place for our venue. We'll have about capacity for about 100 people, so we're in the process of setting up the invitee list, which will probably be around 125, assuming that not everybody's going to come. And then in terms of the lieutenant governor, we haven't reached the 6-week window yet, but that'll be approaching quickly, and our backup would be to talk to some of the local legislature or the secretary of the economic development group for the state as a backup, but we'll face that bridge when we get there. So next thing is to finalize the printing programs, invitation name tags, and our next meeting is on Tuesday, March 15th at 8 a.m. if anybody wants to join us.
I have a quick question. Jim, as I recall, but it's been 2.5 years now, that there was some sort of annual report card that we had printed and we inserted in the program. Are we going to do that again this year? Do we have an updated?
I turned to Zach on that. I stopped
Okay.
writing the annual report when
Sure.
Zach was hired.
We do have an updated annual report. We can print that. I think that'll be something that we'll need to ask. I know you were going to reach out to Curry
Right.
Printing, and so I might include a question there about that annual report card. I know we had discussed asking him what exactly we had printed before and in what quantities. And so, you know, I think we have all the text. I think it'll just be a matter of design and formatting to make it look nice on the page. I do not, Jim, do you have a copy of the
Sure, I
of
have.
the
I think I
handout?
have an electronic copy. I'll look for it today.
Okay,
Why don't you come down the hall and we'll talk about it after?
sounds
That'd
good.
be great.
Thanks, Jim.
Happy to help.
Yeah, and then once I know how big it is or what it looks like, I can ask them. They didn't do the design of any of these pieces. Penta did the design
did it,
for
yeah.
us, and then Curry did the printing. So I don't know.
It was a two-sided card. It was like a 5x7 card.
Okay. So should we ask Penta again for help with design?
So regarding the design, Jim, if you have an electronic copy, I think that should be sufficient. They're all Adobe Acrobat files, and so I have been able to, what I did with the agenda, or not the agenda, sorry, the save the date, the invitation, is I literally went into Adobe Acrobat and just edited all the text and brought it up to speed. I didn't make any design changes or anything like that, but we are able to edit those files.
Okay.
And so I would think that, you know, I think the design is quite nice. So rather than, you know, going back and kind of reinventing the wheel, I think we should just plug and play
Okay.
the new content for this year.
One comment I'd have on the sponsorship, I think that's something you have to think of going forward with the working group, because if you're going to offer sponsorship, you almost have to put it in the program, and you're probably to a point where at some point you won't be able to print anything. Because I would think that you're offering something in return for the sponsorship. It used to be part of the program, if I recall.
Yeah, we included the logos of the sponsors on the program. So we could still do that, but you're right, there'll be a cutoff point,
Yeah.
and we won't be able to do it after that point. But we'll know, we should know our costs before we reach that point.
What was the intent of the, was like a continental breakfast that the group's thinking of, or was it more
We were
formal?
working with local, we were talking to Swansea's Bakery as well as Young Mummy and just doing like a kind of assortment of breakfasty type, small muffins, donut holes, nothing crazy. Coffee, juice, maybe.
So you were going to have your sponsors cover that, right?
I guess the hope was we have, what, the $23.50 or whatever it was in the budget, and we, after doing the trophies and everything, I think it allowed us like about $1,400 worth of food expenses. We were gonna see where we kind of landed once we got to a number and what the food costs would be, and then figure out, is there a difference? Do we need additional funding for more food and things?
You might ask your sponsors to cover that in exchange for putting their logo in the program.
Yeah.
And save that money, because in the past, that's what sponsors did. They paid for their room was donated, they paid for things that were given out at the breakfast itself.
Yeah.
Those things were covered by sponsors.
All right.
I have no problem with that.
Anything else in regards to the awards celebration? Good?
Good.
All right. Then next on the agenda is the town meeting articles for the LRRP.
Great. So enclosed in your packet, and as well as on the Dropbox, is a file of Article 13 on the upcoming annual town meeting warrant. Article 13 would transfer funds from the Economic Development Revolving Account, which is the same account that funds the EDC's Business Assistance Grant Program, to fund two LRP projects that are prioritized for Phase 1 implementation. The first is the Shop Local marketing campaign for local businesses, which I think, in short summary, is a gift card program to try and incentivize greater foot traffic at participating Westborough businesses. And then the second project is a minority women-owned business outreach and support diagnostic and plan. So taking a look and assessing the baseline conditions for the ways in which the town of Westborough serves its minority women-owned business communities, and then creating a list of recommendations, very tactical ones, that we might be able to do in order to better serve those communities which have been so adversely affected by COVID-19. The funding request for the Shop Local campaign is $4,500, and the funding request for the Minority and Women-Owned Business Outreach and Support Plan is $30,000. At this time, I am told that the EDC revolving account has $125,000 in it, in addition to 4,000 funds which are encumbered for the grant program. As a reminder, under the current, language, the EDC is only allowed to expend $40,000 a year from that account, and every year we receive funds in that account from the receipt of, the billboard operators in town. And so, actually, as a result, due to the EDC grant program being dormant for just about a year, we've accumulated a lot of excess funds in that account, which technically, we would never be able to spend unless we adjust the amount of money that we can spend annually to the grant program. These articles, obviously the EDC has voted and supported the LRRP. These articles were presented to the select board, and I do not know yet, Sean or Christy, if you want to chime in, if the select board has voted to support these articles.
I supported them both 5-0.
And so we felt that, given these articles relate to the revolving account and our EDC projects, which will be implemented through the Community Development Department, we wanted to give the board the opportunity to support these articles as presented.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, would somebody like to make a motion? Do you want a written, like we did with the other zoning articles?
Yeah, I'll write something up,
Yeah.
and I'll have you sign it, Todd.
Yep. All right. So anyone want to make a motion that the EDC
I make a motion that EDC support Article 13 as written in the warrant.
a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
I just had one question. How
Mhm.
much do we receive per year in the economic development?
$60,000.
Thank you.
So we get $10,000 per billboard face, and there's
Right.
3. If the committee wants to consider increasing the grant amount, because it's a bylaw that limits us to using 40,000, that would be a bylaw change at town meeting.
So I guess the question is, if we only spend 40,000 a year and we get 60,000?
Because we didn't, when it was originally set up, not all of the billboard, I believe we didn't have all the agreements in place. But all of the billboard, the way that it was voted was that all of the billboard money would be a revenue into that revolving account. But we have several revolving accounts, and all of them have max amounts that can be spent annually. So it's something that could be revisited. But prior to this year, we hadn't had a need to revisit it. But because the grant program's been so successful, it's something that you might want to consider, we might want to consider for our October town meeting.
I think we will move, Zach and I have talked about that there'll probably be a push for this committee to look at that for the October town meeting, to increase that appropriations. It'll make it a little easier and give out more grant money.
Exactly.
All right. Let's see, next on the agenda is the planning department report.
So that was a good discussion, segue to my discussion. As you know, at the last meeting, this board voted to support the planning board zoning articles, and 2 of those are economic development articles, particularly the digital billboard, off-premises sign article. And the board had their public hearings and voted to support both of those articles, as well as a 3rd zoning article. The digital billboard article would potentially fund additional money for grants and into that fund that we just discussed. So I would urge everyone here that's a voter to please come to town meeting on the 19th of March to support those 2 zoning articles, because they are what I call minority rules articles. 1/3 of the people can defeat the article. You need a 2/3 majority for the article to pass at town meeting. That's the test for a typical zoning article. So the digital billboard article drew a lot of questions, and I don't know if the selectmen voted to support that article. I don't know if they voted on that one
We
yet.
did vote on that one,
Did
didn't
you-
we? I think we did.
I
I
remember.
believe it was 5-0.
Oh, it was unanimous? That's good. There were a lot of questions at the Finance Committee last week. I expect that article will draw a lot of discussion and questions at town meeting. So in the interest of supporting your budget for future grants, please be there to support that article, as well as the industrial E article, which I think will be a lot easier to pass. We also have a couple site plan reviews coming up. The 9 Otis Street landscaping business is currently in the public hearing. They've asked for a continuance, so the planning board won't act on that this evening. Also, we received application for 54 Otis Street. That's Atlantic Management's property for another Amazon project. The public hearing will begin next month. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, particularly about either of those 2 projects, give me a call.
So Jim, did you say there were 2 zoning articles or 3 zoning articles?
There's actually 3.
What's
The 3rd one is not an economic development article. It
Okay.
has to do with allowing cemeteries and outdoor recreation on municipal property.
Okay, great.
Jim, is there anything you can talk about at the former Mass Electric BJ's site? Is that,
Not at this point.
okay, thank you.
I don't have any information yet, so technically it's not public information yet.
Okay. Any other questions for Jim?
Yeah, town meeting is March 19th,
Correct.
9 AM.
Saturday, March 19th, 9 AM, high school. The zoning articles are towards the end of the warrant. I think they're Articles 28, 29, and 30.
38 articles, yeah. I think those are right.
Yeah, so they'll be in the evening.
It's a lot,
It's a long warrant.
a lot of articles.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Next on the agenda is the Community Development Department report.
Great, so we have Kid Strong Westborough is actually opening in Westborough this week. They have a ribbon cutting scheduled for later today at 12 p.m. If any of you are around, you are more than welcome to come and celebrate a new business in Westborough. I believe Jim has already mentioned this, but 54 Otis Street, an Atlantic Management Project, has submitted site plan for a 100,000 square foot total building on Otis Street. And then I don't know if folks are aware, but there was a fire in the arcade building over the weekend that has affected the 4 small business tenants that are on the first floor of that building. I believe 2 of the residential units were also seriously affected. I am not sure where everything there stands, or if those businesses have been able to reoccupy those spaces as of yet. Mark is nodding that they have not.
The building has no gas and no electricity still at this point.
Correct.
So that is, I think, an unfortunate development for our downtown area. We have a few upcoming events over the next couple of months. The Quarter 9495 Chamber of Commerce is having another ribbon cutting for Use for Venues, which is an event center that is opened at 45 Oak Street on March 9th at 5:30 p.m. Again, you're all welcome to join if you are available and want to celebrate another Westborough new business. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council is having an info session regarding the DOER's new stretch energy code tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. at 3:30 p.m. The Metro West Visitors Bureau, which the EDC is a member of, is having its annual meeting on March 10th at 8:30 a.m. Mass Econ is having a event on commercial real estate trends on 3/16 at 10 a.m. I would strongly encourage anyone on the board to attend that. I think it'll be very helpful for us and for the work that we do. The Metro West Chamber of Commerce is having a joint networking event with the Ashland Business Association on March 24th at 5:30 p.m. The Quarter 9495 Chamber of Commerce is having a legislative breakfast on March 31st at 7:15 a.m. The Quarter 9495 Chamber of Commerce is also bringing back their Business Expo this year, which is scheduled for April 6th at 4 p.m. I know that the EDC has historically had a strong presence at this event. We have reserved an exhibition space for that event, so we will be there again. I am working with Jim to update some of our materials that we had previously brought to that event, but we will need folks to do, to volunteer to show up at that event in shifts. I believe in the past we had 2 2-hour shifts of 3 people to support our table, and then to walk around and network and meet other businesses that might be growing or expanding that we can support. So in the coming weeks, I will send out an email for folks to sign up for one of those 2 shifts. So please, be on the lookout for that. And the event goes from 4 to 8 p.m. on April 6th. And then lastly, we have Mass Econ is having the 18th annual Team Massachusetts Economic Impact Awards the following day on April 7th at 4 p.m. Olympus Corporation of Americas is a silver recipient for the Massachusetts Team Massachusetts Economic Impact Awards. They were one of the EDC's 3 nominees from back in June. So it's great to see them get the recognition and actually walk away with an award. I think truly validates everyone here's feeling that Olympus has been a tremendously impactful project, not just for our community, but for the Commonwealth as well. That is all I have, unless, Fred, you have anything to add?
No, just any support you can give to those 4 businesses downtown would be great. It's kind of up to Stonegate now to get electricity back and gas so they can reopen. We're hoping to get the businesses open possibly the same time but before the residents.
All right.
A question. Just a question to Zach. Zach, can you give me a little more information on the 2 Mass Econ events? The one on 3/16, 10 a.m. Where is that?
3/16 is like more of a webinar or panel on commercial real estate trends in the Massachusetts area. So I think it'll be more informational about what's happening now and what to expect in the future over the next 6 to 12 months. The 18th annual Team
That,
Massachusetts.
I'm sorry, back to that, that's a webinar?
That's a webinar, yep. Or actually, let me just confirm. I believe it is a Zoom link.
Okay.
Yes, it is a webinar. The one on April 7th is an in-person event, actually at Gillette Stadium at the Putnam Club. I will need to check with them to confirm how many folks we can send. Although the town is one of their more active municipal members, and considering one of our nominees is receiving an award, I would expect that they're going to allow however many of us that they can accommodate to join. Bonnie, an EDC ambassador, is also on Mass Econ's board of directors, and I have spoken with her, and she expects to be there as well. So, great.
That was a 4 o'clock meeting?
4 o'clock, yes, on April 7th.
I have one more question.
Mhm.
What was the other meeting that you mentioned after the one on the 9th?
So
something?
MAPC is having an info session, which is also a webinar, regarding DOER's new stretch energy code. I'll leave if any more of the this really isn't
That's fine, yeah.
my area of expertise. This is more of a Fred thing. But
I missed it.
it is an issue that will affect, commercial property owners and businesses going forward. And it, would be helpful to join considering our relationship with Sustainable Westborough and our role in educating businesses about relevant changes and programs that pertain to sustainability.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions for Zach? If not, then any other business? Anything anyone wants to discuss? No? All right. Does anyone want to make a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting 2 minutes early.
I'll second that, I guess.
All right. All in favor? Thank you all very much. Got a lot accomplished today. Thanks.